When can you call yourself a writer? It's a question I get a lot. I'm Julie Duffy, the host of the Story a Day Challenge. Story a Day September is just around the corner. We already wrapped up Story a Day May this year. I talk to a lot of writers. I talk to a lot of people who want to be writers, and the question of when you can call yourself a writer come up. Now, I just got off a phone call with a bunch of people. It wasn't a phone call, it was a Zoom call. We're in the 21st century. What am I kidding? Who am I trying to kid here? I just got off this Zoom call with a bunch of people who are going through a course with me. And there's no real structure to the calls because they have a bunch of coursework to do. And then we get together once a week. And it's just an open discussion for what we've worked on this week and what the whatever came up for them. And it's not really a question of me answering stuff for them and giving them the full, authoritative answer. It's us talking what we do as writers and what I would do in that situation, what he would do in that situation, what she would do in that situation. And the people who come to the meeting jump in and they talk about their experiences with writing. And it's such a great experience because everyone's being vulnerable, everybody's sharing what they're doing as writers. And it struck me today that if they had not allowed themselves to own the identity of writer, they'd miss out on all of this wisdom, all of this shared experience of being a writer, because they wouldn't be ready for it yet. They couldn't come to a writer's meeting because they're not a writer yet. Right? So when can you call yourself a writer? I would make the case that you can call yourself a writer as soon as you decide that you want to be a writer. Even better, once you start writing. But all you need to do for that is, as soon as you finish watching this, just pick up a pen and write something. You don't have to be published. You don't have to be, in fact, you'll never be a published writer if you don't allow yourself to think of yourself as a writer way before you get to the point of sharing your work with anyone. So I just watched this group get so much out of the discussion because they had allowed themselves to own that title of writer, which had allowed them to sign up for a course for writers, which had allowed them to turn up on a Zoom call with 12 other writers, which had allowed them to share their experience when someone said, what do you think about endings? Or what do you think about the opening line? Or what do you think about this character that I'm working on? Because they allowed themselves to see themselves as a writer, and that allowed them to actually try and write some stories. Then they had experience which they could share, and everybody in the group benefited from the experience of all of the other writers in the group, even though none of us in that group has a best-selling novel or book or anything anywhere near a New York Times bestseller list. But we're all happy to call ourselves writers because we write and because we're walking through the world as writers. And that's why I say you don't actually have to have written anything to call yourself a writer, because from the moment that you start looking at the world as a writer, you're a writer. So I want you to call yourself a writer. If you feel any urge, if you take anything away from this video, it's permission to call yourself a writer before you've met anybody else's external threshold of what a writer looks like or what a writer does. The first step is to call yourself a writer. And that's something I'm talking about in my Writer Code workshop, free workshop I'm doing at the moment, which you can sign up for. It links down below. And it walks you through the first three steps that you need to take to get comfortable calling yourself a writer. I don't think you have to do anything to call yourself a writer. Like I said, you just decide, you start looking at the world like a writer does, you're a writer. But to get you comfortable with the idea of calling yourself a writer, you're going to sort of quickly need to take some steps to back it up. And that's what the Writer Code workshop does. It takes you through some very simple, I won't say no stress, because people get a little stressed about some of the steps I ask them to take, but they're easy, relatively easy steps that you can take, which will back up your decision to call yourself and view yourself as a writer. I'm not asking you to write a novel. I'm not even asking you to write a complete story. There's just some simple steps that I want you to take this week. So sign up for the workshop down below, and I will lead you through some very simple steps to get you comfortable with the idea of being a writer today, not someday, today, right now. Click on the link, and I'll see you inside.